She's going to start something that I put together here recently at the beginning of this. Hopefully the volume will be good. People came to my school to tell me the dangers of smoking. I remember thinking, oh, shut up. It's none of your business. I'm not hurting anyone but myself. And that is so far away. Nothing is going to happen to me until I am old and ready to die, so it does not matter. And so I lived my life by this decision, and nothing would change that until it was too late. It was just me at first, and I was making my own way through life until one day I would become a father of a little girl, and that would change everything. It was no longer about me. It was about her, and everything I knew about life had changed. Now I was diagnosed with end-stage COPD and told if I was lucky, I had 5 years left to live. My daughter had to watch in terror as they worked very hard to get me to breathe again, as I was suffocating and struggling for my life for 4 hours. I would have to have lung reduction surgery just to make me more comfortable with the time that I had left. I would do this just prior to my grandson being born, not knowing if I was going to make it through the surgery to meet him. It was an epic struggle, one day after getting out of intensive care, to fight for my life in great pain with almost no physical strength, just to live long enough to meet my grandson. 2 years after he was born, my granddaughter was born. There is an intensity of love that transcends anything I have ever known when it comes to grandchildren. I find I have so much to live for, so very little time left to enjoy it. Only too late do I realize that I am not just hurting myself. I am hurting my daughter, who lost her mother to lung cancer just a few years ago. And I look into the eyes of my grandchildren, and I see the deep love they have for me, and I know I am going to break their poor little hearts. I am bringing pain to my family and all of my close friends. How did I live this lie in such ignorance? And besides, I'm not an old person, and I certainly am not ready to die. I was just like you. Don't be just like me. Kind of feels funny for me to stand in here today because I went to high school here. I remember people coming and talking to me about smoking, and you know, they show you pictures that kind of turn your stomach and maybe tweak your mind a little bit, but they didn't touch me because I remember exactly what I was thinking, and probably some of you are thinking along the same lines. When they came to talk to me and the other kids that were in the school, in my mind I was thinking, oh, shut up, it's none of your business. I'm not hurting anybody but myself. And nothing's going to happen to me until I'm an old person, ready to die. For some reason, I thought old was 40, 50. And somehow in my mind, I thought, when you get that old, you really don't have much left to live for, you know? So, I mean, that's the way I thought when I was here. And so I didn't take their advice. You know, and I just kept smoking and I kept living my life, and it was just me. And then as that little video shows, something happened in my life that I didn't plan on. I never planned on being a father. Because, I had a real rough childhood. I left home when I was 9 years old. It was either that or get beat to death. Because they weren't protecting children as well as they are today. And that's when I started smoking too, when I was 9. And I just kept at it all of my life. And a lot of my life I felt depressed about life. It just, I felt like I was the lowest person on earth, everybody else was better than me, better looking, smarter, just everything. I just lived in depression, and that smoking habit just stayed with me, and I programmed my mind to think that smoking a cigarette relieves stress. Today I know it doesn't. Today I know what I was doing was I was defocusing. I was changing, the focus of what was bothering me to something else. And today I realized that what I was really doing was I was taking all of that stress and I was putting it in a bank and I was saving it up for later. And one day, that bank was going to burst and I wouldn't be able to handle the returns. So here I am, a single father, and I've been a street person all my life, and I realized at that point I got a choice. I either quit being a street person and take care of this little girl and change my whole lifestyle, and I did. I got off the streets. I ended up in a custody battle for her. I won sole physical and legal custody of her, and I just gave my life to her. But I kept smoking. And everything seemed like for a while that I was going to be one of those people that gets to smoke for almost all your life. Now all of a sudden I started noticing shortness of breath. And then a little while later I started noticing that I was waking up with a cough and it was getting harder and harder to smoke a cigarette. And I finally went to the doctor to find out what was wrong. Not to tell myself I had to quit smoking, but to find a way to be able to have that morning cigarette. And that's real crazy because that's how the addiction is. The tobacco companies have worked diligently to make tobacco more and more addicting, to the point where it's far more addicting than heroin. My daughter watched her mom die of lung cancer. She held her in her arms, right up to the point she died. And my daughter was smoking, and she couldn't quit smoking. When her mom died, she had to have a cigarette. Because her mind said that was a way to relieve stress. And then her dad got diagnosed with end-stage COPD and emphysema. And she still, for a while, could not quit because that's how strong this addiction is. Several years back, she decided she was going to quit smoking for my birthday, and she hasn't gone back. And I'm really happy about that. But people helped me along the way. I went through all of the stuff I went through because of this little law called the Code of Silence, where you don't tell anybody what's going on in your family or around. You just keep it to yourself. You lock it inside, and you walk around with a smile like everything's okay. And that's what I did. I never told anybody about the terror that I lived with as a child till not too long ago. And because of that, I went through a lot of stuff. But people showed up in my life and they gave me little tidbits of wisdom that actually helped me a lot to keep me from going off the deep end to the point where I'm still here today. And one person told me, they said, you know what? You need to learn the secret of mind over matter. I said, yeah, what's that? And I expected a guru type answer, and he said, if you don't mind, it don't matter. And I started laughing at him. I thought that was really funny. But for some reason, it started to make some real sense. I was all depressed. I was so angry inside because everything mattered too much. And somehow I learned, to start letting go. And that's where my freedom started to come. Another person walked up to me and they said, I perceive you don't have the ability to forgive. And he said, if you can't do it, you might try praying and asking for the ability. And I was willing to try anything, and I did that. And pretty soon, the ability came. I was able to forgive the people that had brutalized me in the earlier part of my life. And there's a great freedom that came with that. And then I found that I was able to forgive the one person I could never forgive. That was me. I was the hardest one to forgive of all. Well, then my daughter, she had children, the ones you saw there. First came my grandson, and I don't know what happened, but when my daughter was born, the doctor handed her to me, and I just stood there with her in my hands, with tears in my eyes, and I had no words, because something was happening inside of me so deep and so wondrous and so powerful, there was no words for it, but it changed my life. A lot of times we go through life-changing forces. And then when my grandson was born, my heart quadrupled in size. And I was like, God, what is with this? I mean, if it gets any bigger, my heart's going to explode. I can't withstand this. And then my granddaughter came along. And those two, they look at me with such pure love in their eyes. And I'm so much to them that it's unbelievable. And it's hard for me to, feel that I even deserve that sometimes. But, when I look into their eyes, it's bittersweet. Because I know at some point, I'm going to have to die. And they're going to suffer a lot of pain. A lot of people, when they smoke, they always worry about cancer. I don't have cancer. I won't live long enough to have cancer. Emphysema and COPD are not considered to be cancer at all. But in a lot of ways, they're more hideous because they kill you slower. They suffocate you to death very slowly. And I'll tell you right now, there is nothing more terrifying than suffocation. These are some of the things that I put in the bank because I didn't listen to somebody who came and maybe showed me pictures, and maybe they talked to me from the top of their head, so I knew it was head knowledge, and I didn't listen to it. I kind of wish that somebody had come and spoke to me with tears in their eyes and their voice shaking, because maybe I would have listened a little bit closer to what was being said. Maybe some of your parents are smokers too, and by no means go home and fight with them to try to make them quit. It's going to make things really bad. But you can go home and tell them, somebody came and told me their story today, and this is what their story was. And I love you too much to ever lose you that way. You can talk to them from your heart with compassion, and you'll get a lot farther. When this thing first came down, I woke up in the morning and I was having extreme difficulty breathing. And my daughter's already terrorized because she's watched her mom die of lung cancer. And she's standing there in the living room and I'm fighting so hard for breath and I can't do it. And what I didn't know was that there's a condition I go through, it's called trapping air. It's an extreme exasperation attack. I get air stuck in my lungs. My lungs are full of air, but that air is dead. There's very little oxygen left in it, high degree of carbon dioxide. And all I can do is take tiny little gulps of air on top of it. That's like taking a big breath and holding it, and then try to breathe on top of that without touching any of the air you're holding in your lungs. And every cell in your body is screaming that you're suffocating to death and that you're going to die. That level of terror was so intense, it turned me into a non-smoker in those 4 hours of terror. I left that hospital and I never touched another cigarette again. Only problem is I quit too late. You know, when the doctors tell you that you only got 5 years left to live, you know, you got to do some real soul searching, like, whoa, what are you going to do with that? Some people get crazy and they go stay drunk, or they decide they're going to go out there and take everything they can take out of life while they can. I sat there and I thought, I can't imagine another living soul having to suffocate the way I did for those 4 hours. I can't imagine any one of you ever having to know what that feels like. And so I knew right then that what I wanted to do was dedicate what life I have left to try to stop as many people as I can and make them realize, you know, they need to choose life now. Don't wait a few years, because the longer, if you're smoking, the longer you go with it, the stronger it gets. And pretty soon my voice of reason will be a dim echo in your past. You know, what I really wanted to do when the doctors first diagnosed me was I wanted to get on TV, I wanted to get into radio stations, I wanted to go into groups like this and talk to people and tell them, look, you don't want to be here. You don't want to walk in these shoes. You don't want to know what this feels like. You know, and it seemed like that was going to die for a while, that, you know, I was just going to fade away into the night quietly. But something happened. Somebody sent me a link that CDC was looking for a spokesperson, you know, and they would pay him $2,500. I figured, I'll try. They probably won't pick me because this is 1 in a million or 1 in multi-million. I mean, my chances is probably almost nothing. You know, and I talked to them from my heart, the way I'm talking to you guys, you know, and pretty soon they couldn't get me down there fast enough. And so I made a commercial with the Center for Disease Control that is being aired across the entire United States. You know, and that commercial says, if the doctor gives you 5 years to live, then use that time to explain to your grandchildren why their grandpa's not going to be around anymore to share his wisdom and his love. That I haven't figured out how to do that yet, and I'm running out of time because time's not on my side. In that video you saw, the big scar running down my chest, they had to cut the top of both my lungs off just so I could be more comfortable, you know, with the time that I have left, because I felt like I was almost out of breath all the time, whether I was sitting, watching TV, or walking upstairs, or just walking. My voice is changing because of the changes that are happening in my body. You know, and the only thing that's going to save me, and that's only for a while, is if I get lung transplants. And my chances of getting those and living long enough to get them is very small. When I went to the hospital and went through that surgery to get the lung reduction surgery, I got out of intensive care, and I was only out of intensive care 1 day. And then they said, we're sorry, but you're going to have to get out of bed, and you need to walk around the hall at least once, or you're going to die. You're going to develop pneumonia and die. I mean, when you get out of intensive care after going through a major surgery like that, you don't have any strength, and you're in a lot of pain. And just to get up out of that bed is a huge task. But I did it. I struggled day in and day out to get enough strength back, and I had to fight for my life. You know, I'm sharing some of these things. And there's other things that I have to go through yet. Until the end. I went and did some work with somebody that helps people with conditions like mine to be able to be a little stronger and breathe better. And he asked me, he said, are you at the point where you have to decide between eating and breathing. I looked at him and said, "What? You're crazy." I said, "You can breathe and eat at the same time." And he looked at me and, with kind of a disgust, and he said, "No, believe me." And then I went fishing with a friend of mine. We hiked down to the water, and it was all downhill, and it wasn't too bad. We fished for a while, and then it was time to come back. And coming back, it took me a long time because I was coming uphill, and I would walk maybe 50 yards and have to stop and catch my breath, and I was desperately out of breath. I didn't even know if I was going to make it back to the car. But I was so far out of breath that I thought there for a minute, and I thought, you know what? If I had to eat right now, that would be impossible. And then I understood at that moment what that man was telling me. There were 5 of us that did this nationwide campaign to try to reach people like you at the beginning of this year. 2 of the people have already died. There's only 3 of us left. I'm really hoping and praying inside that something that I'm telling you today is going to ring true in your hearts, and that you're not going to be able to let it go. And that will help you make a decision to choose life. And if you're already there, to fight for it. Because, when I was in school, life was real depressing and the future was uncertain. And I thought it was always going to be that way, but it wasn't. The moment I became a father, everything changed. And I just wanted to live forever after that. I wasn't concerned about what I wanted to do anymore. I wasn't concerned about my time. My daughter never even had a babysitter. If you would have asked her when she's growing up, "Who's your babysitter?" she wouldn't know what you're talking about. Because I didn't need a break. She was my break. You guys are like fresh slates here, When you leave this high school, things are going to change really big. Then you're going to be the masters of your own destiny. And you're going to start having to shape your own ways and make your own decisions and look after yourself. Today, where I stand is I have everything to live for and very little time left to do it. My little granddaughter's, saying, "Papa," whenever we go anywhere, we're in public, she'll start pointing at me and she'll start saying, "Papa, Papa, Papa." She wants everybody to know that's her Papa, and I can't tell you how good that feels. I wish somebody would have come to my school back then and spoke to me with tears in their eyes and pleaded with me from the very depth of their heart, with everything that they could muster out of their own soul to try to touch me. It may have changed things for me. The other thing I want to tell you is this. The reason I was chosen by CDC is because they wanted to represent the Alaska Native people, and they also picked an American Indian from down south to represent the Native American people. Why? Because we have the highest rate of cancer than any nationality in the United States. And the United States is full of every nationality you can think of. And it's because we don't have the genetic makeup to fight against cancer. The same thing that happens with alcohol happens with tobacco. And so if you're Native and you smoke, you're running twice the risk. I also discovered these things too. When I was laying there on my deathbed, I thought about, what's really important. And I came down to two things. Relationships. The people that you love, they were right there. What was the other thing? Memories. And so I became committed at that point that I was going to try to develop as many relationships as I could. And not just relationships, but deep relationships. Because most of my life in that depression, I lived behind a wall I built. And so it didn't allow me to socialize with other people, really, from my heart. Most people that knew me, I just talked to them from my head. And so I got committed to start really working at trying to develop really deep, meaningful relationships. And then those memories, it's not all about me. I became committed to trying to create as many wonderful memories as I could in other people, in my family, in my friends, in my daughter, in my grandchildren, in other strangers' lives through random acts of kindness. And I realized if I keep doing this, I'm enriching my life. I'm making it worth more. And this opportunity to reach out across the whole United States, how many people get an opportunity like that? I did. And because of it, I'm ending up in places like this. I've traveled up to Kodiak and, up to Dillingham, and I'm being invited up into, I think, Kotzebue, and they want to bring me up there while they're having a big whaling thing that goes on in the fall, and hopefully they'll beach a whale while I'm there. And I was thinking about that, and I thought, well, if you guys do, then don't touch it. Just move away from it and give me a fishing pole and let me stand next to it and then take my picture. Because I want to tell everybody that fishing is great in Alaska. But if you sit around bored, it's because you're waiting for someone else, to bring your excitement, to shape your little world around you. Life is a big adventure. There are so many things out there, discoveries and adventures, that you can't live long enough to discover all of them. So it makes more sense to get up and get out there and start that discovery. They try to encourage you in these schools about that. It didn't click. I didn't pick it up. I hope you guys do. And I hope you realize, basically your happiness is your job. But I really want to thank you guys for listening to me, for allowing me to share a little bit with you about what life is like when you make the wrong decisions. I hope this stays with all of you. And I can't do this enough. I don't have a lot of choices in life left in front of me or a lot of time, so I gotta kind of redeem the time. And if they would open the door to every school in the United States, I would spend the last of my life's breath running through those doors and doing what I'm doing here today. Because if I can do that, I know that I've made a bit of difference in the world. And I get to leave this world having given something that means something. But I wish you guys all the best. And, if you smoke, God, I hope you make it. I hope you don't have to stand up on a stage someday and tell somebody how sad it is to discover how beautiful life is and then not have the time to enjoy it that much. Thank you, Ariel, for having me.